Are the world's middle powers making a new bet on Beijing? Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is the latest Western leader to visit China, joining a growing list that includes France's Emmanuel Macron and Canada's Mark Carney. With the United States increasingly focused inward, traditional allies appear to be charting their own course, which could be summed up as business with China and defense with the U.S. But how long can this balancing act last? I'm Alicia Garcia-Herrero, and today's newsmaker is Middle Powers Courting China. This week's visit by the UK's Keir Starmer may seem routine, but it comes at a pivotal moment in geopolitics. One by one, the world's middle powers, from European countries to Canada, are showing up in Beijing, signaling that they're no longer content to follow Washington's lead without question. Each visit is framed as economic outreach, but the subtext is strategic autonomy. Meanwhile, Beijing is welcoming them with open arms, even if it isn't offering much in return, at least not for now. For the U.S., especially under President Trump's America First approach, this is raising alarms.
Neither an ice age nor a golden age, but a clear sign of warming relations. The UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is in the midst of the first UK state visit to China in 8 years. The delegation included 60 representatives from UK businesses and underlines the importance London is placing on the trip.
China is a vital player on the global stage, and it's vital that we build a more sophisticated relationship.
Both countries hope to improve their relationships, which have become strained over the years, from allegations of spying, Beijing's support for Moscow in Russia's war in Ukraine, and public crackdowns in Hong Kong. Another contentious issue was laid to rest just weeks before the Prime Minister's visit. The UK government gave its approval for the construction of a new Chinese mega embassy in the heart of central London. This was despite intelligence warnings that the location could pose national security risks because of its proximity to sensitive financial and communications infrastructure.
China is willing to develop a long-term, stable and comprehensive strategic partnership with Britain, which will benefit the people of both countries and also the world. Your visit has attracted a lot of attention. The road to success is often strewn with setbacks.
The UK is seeking to expand opportunities for British companies, recharge a sluggish domestic economy, and improve bilateral ties. And Starmer is not the only leader of a middle power to do so recently. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney returned from China earlier in January, after having pulled off what was widely considered a stunning success. It was also a symbolic rebuke of US tariffs.
Our relationship, the one comparison I will give you with the United States, our relationship, this is no insight, is much more multifaceted, much deeper, much broader than it is with China. But yes, in terms of the way that our relationship has progressed in recent months with China, it is more predictable, and you see results coming from that.
Emmanuel Macron made his fourth presidential visit to China as French leader in December 2025.
Europe and China have a role to play in laying, alongside other partners, the foundations for fair and robust global economic governance based on rules and not the law of the strongest.
While not directly mentioned, recent actions of US President Donald Trump remain in many leaders' minds.
Because I want Greenland for security. I don't want
Trump's attempts to slap tariffs on his traditional European and Canadian trading partners, coupled with his threats to annex Greenland, have made many nervous of the president's transactional foreign policy. Fresh from cementing what has been dubbed the mother of all deals with India, the EU also seeks closer trade ties with China. China is courting rising Asian power, South Korea, and is already Australia's biggest economic trade partner. Still, some caution that British relations with China is one of careful engagement, not outright alignment. Britain's trade and diplomatic charm offensive with China reflects a wider turning point. It suggests the global order built over the past 80 years is being reshaped, and China is emerging as a central force in new international partnerships.
Joining me now are from Beijing is the president of the Center for China and Globalization, Dr. Henry Huiyao Wang. Also in China, in Shenzhen, senior fellow at the Brussels-based think tank Bruegel, Alicia Garcia-Herrero. And from Naples in the U.S. state of Florida, geopolitical analyst and former U.S. Congressional staff member, Brendan Weichert. Welcome to all of you. It's good to have you on the program. Alicia, let me begin with you. When you look at these trips to China by Starmer, by Macron, and Mark Carney, it may seem minor in isolation individually, but when you sort of view them all together, do they represent a deeper shift in priorities among these middle powers?
Well, I would say perhaps not for Macron because he's been visiting China recently, and I don't think it's a major turn. He didn't announce anything like really special, if you ask me. But yeah, McCartney and of course Starmer. This is a different ball game because they both have not been in China, or either their predecessors, for years and years, around 8 years, if not 10 years. So it's a long time, and that is a turning point, at least for these two countries, indeed.
Okay, Brandon, let me turn to you. I mean, from Washington's perspective, is this seen as maybe the word is a little too harsh, but a betrayal? I mean, could it be fairly interpreted as simply hedging by these countries, these middle powers, to sort of diversify their ties?
Well, that's exactly what I think is happening. Is they're just hedging. Now, whether the Trump administration, specifically the president himself, believes that is another question entirely. I suspect he will be expressing displeasure either publicly or certainly privately with Keir Starmer. We know that he had expressed displeasure with Mark Carney when Carney did something similar a week ago. So I believe, though, that the British and certainly the British are simply hedging right now. And I think that ultimately there's a lot of steps that have to happen between meeting with the Chinese leadership for Britain and suddenly reversing 70 years of economic dependency on the United States.
Okay. Let's get the host's perspective. Dr. Wang, thanks for your patience. I mean, how is Beijing interpreting these series of diplomatic visits? Brendan said the U.S. is saying it could be interpreted as hedging by the middle powers. I mean, is it perhaps viewing this as an opportunity to charm some key allies of the United States? What do you think?
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I think it's really we see a paradigm shift, particularly after this year, but also it's over long term of the relations between China and West. But I think the narrative of China versus West, or West versus China, probably is gone. A lot of countries, particularly mid powers, are now coming to China based on their own judgment and also based on their own merits selection. So. It turned out now the so-called Western alliance, particularly like what happened in the U.S. and also in NATO and also Western alliance, is really has a lot of a problem now because we see what President Trump is calling for. As retreating to Western Hemisphere, let's consolidate Western Hemisphere. Let's get a Greenland. I mean, that's put a lot of burden on the NATO's, on European countries. But on China, there's continuously to promote globalization, cooperation, and of course, being the second largest economy, it become a new anchor of the global system that all those middle powers are worried that are going to falling apart. So now they have to really come to China first for the economic business benefit. But second, let's hold the international system together. China is the only country that still supports strongly UN and all the WTO, WHO, where US is quitting 66 international organizations. So I think European countries still wants to maintain a global order, and the same for Canada. And I think China can be a very strong partner for maintain multilateralism in a multipolar world.
Okay, we'll get to the whole sort of multipolar polar world in just a bit. But I mean, Alicia, let me come back to you. I mean, you had mentioned that while China's market may not be offering a whole lot of opportunities, I mean, the fact of the matter is countries still want foreign direct investment by China. What exactly are countries like the United Kingdom, like Canada, like France, looking to gain from Beijing?
Well, I guess, as I mentioned, the market is not the strength because Chinese imports are flat. They've been flat for a long time. And actually, this is basically because there's a lot of competition in the Chinese market from domestic players. So there's very little room, basically, to be profitable, let alone the fact that Chinese corporates themselves are not profitable. Profitability is very, very low in China, very low net interest margin, you name it. Yeah. So profit margin is not there. So it's not that they're looking for. However, China is innovating. So you just had AstraZeneca announcing 15 billion in investments in China. That's a big chunk. 2.5 billion in research and development. Is this good for the UK or China? That's a big question. So you see, yeah, it is good for the UK, but it's also obviously true that AstraZeneca will be moving R&D from UK to China. So that's now what they really want is, however, that foreign direct investment from China, greenfield into the green tech, especially so EVs, renewables, things that the West wants to basically upgrade and get to Chinese levels of technology. That's something that is very appealing to all of these countries.
Okay, fair enough. Henry, on the flip side, what is China willing to give?
No, I think that, we see this parade of Western leaders all coming to China. It's a good sign that China can offer many things. Of course, we can normalize relations. We can also provide a lot of business opportunities for getting more imports from those countries. If you have a bad relation, you don't have it, but you have a good relation, you do, like Australia and many other countries do have a good benefits from China. Furthermore, China is going to be massively investing overseas too, because all the Chinese companies want to go outbound investment. And then because of you have a bad geopolitical relation, no country wants to do that. Now, if they are improving relations, all those countries wants to go and invest. And so we see a upper trend for that as well. And finally, I think all the foreign companies coming to China. China has all the state-of-the-art technology. It's a huge incubation ground and the largest application scene for AI, for many other things. So if you want to conquer the global market, you have to conquer China market. And that's where you get all the upstream, downstream, and all the talents and all the supporting systems so that you can really get the best product out of China. Mind you that 40% of China exports are made by multinationals. They are making all this money. 80% of Apple phone was made in China. So 50% of a Tesla car made in China, and Walmart purchased 60% of supplies from China. So I think that's really important, maintain a good relation with China.
Okay. Alicia, I want to ask you quickly. I mean, when you consider some of the comments that have been made by world leaders, especially in the last couple of weeks, and the position that European countries and Canada's in, do you feel that it is a sustainable approach, what these countries are doing? Essentially, sort of they're forging closer economic ties, but on the flip side, they're staying true to the United States when it comes to security and defense.
Well, even that, I would say this staying true to US on security is shaking, isn't it? I mean, this is basically Europe pushing for its own, not only economic security, but by now even, defense. And I think the UK is also realizing that it's a very tricky position to be, especially since Trump's not only Trump's attack or verbal attack as when it comes to Greenland, but also Trump's position on Ukraine. The Europeans have been saying for a long time China is enabling the war. I mean, Russia's war of aggression. We've heard that many times, but the reality is, while this might have been true, Trump has actually made that we've kind of forgotten about that because Trump has done probably, I would say, whether worse or better, but similarly the case, yeah, in Alaska summit, you name it. So I would say, I mean, whether it's the UK or Europe, or let alone Canada, everybody's really rethinking this security side of the equation, which they then tilts the balance on the economic slightly further on China, even if the benefits, I insist on that, are not so clear. But the thing is, the security side is no longer guaranteed by the US.
Okay, Brendan, let's get you back. Well, maybe give you a chance to reply to what Alicia was saying, and then I'll also ask you a question about energy ties with Russia too. But first, you.
All I will say is that I think that the trend lines long term are definitely, in terms of trade globally, working against the United States. But right now, in the near term, the United States, yes, they've offended their allies. We've done things to kind of push them around, but ultimately, there really isn't any considerable movement yet away from the U.S.-led economic order within the sort of the British and Canadian perspectives. They're seeking leverage, and this is what middle powers do: is they seek leverage. They play the bigger powers off each other to try to extract the best deal. And of course, in the long run, there is sort of a gravitational pull. Once these countries start playing footsie with the other power, there is a high probability that over time they will become part of the alternative system that is being created. But the alternative system that is being created by China and even Russia, the so-called BRICS system, that's still very much underway. It's not yet fully matured. And I think in particular, when you're talking about countries like Britain, which are so integrated into the American system, I think that there's still many steps to occur before Britain, there's a real threat that Britain's going to break away. And in the sense of Canada, just by dint of geography, the Canadians are sort of stuck with us Americans and the mercurial whims of the president. And my prediction with Canada is that the Albertan movement, I think they are going to go independent, and I think the United States government under Trump will recognize them as independent and probably try to move toward absorbing them in some way into the union here. But regardless of whether that last part happens, once Alberta goes, the Canadian sort of experiment with confederation is over. And they're going to be even more weakened by that move. So I don't see either Canada or Britain yet breaking from America realistically and going to, say, a Chinese system. It could happen for Britain over time, but we're not there yet.
Okay, I mean, so you've essentially said that this is what sort of middle powers do, and if I've understood you correctly, you're essentially saying that we're not really in a truly multipolar system. It's more of a system that's sort of governed by the United States, China, and Russia.
Not yet.
Do you feel that these middle powers need to pick a side with everything?
Yes, exactly. It's a tripolar. No, they don't need to pick a side with everything. But right now, the reason Britain and the reason Canada are making such a big stink, if you will, hey, look at us, we're going over to China, your competitor. I really think that's about strategic signaling more than anything for those two countries. Countries like India, they're going to be a little bit more able to maneuver in that middle ping pong sort of way between the two sides. But right now, with Britain and Canada in particular, I really think this is them seeking leverage. They know that Trump has sort of embarrassed them. Trump is highlighting their relative weakness on the world stage, not just Britain, by the way, but Europe in general. The Russians certainly have highlighted European weakness with the Ukraine war. And so I think that Britain and Europe and Canada, I think they're trying to carve out a pathway where they still stay with the Americans, but they put the American administration on guard. But ultimately, it doesn't, and unfortunately for them, it doesn't really matter because the power bases for now are the U.S., China, and Russia.
Okay, Dr. Wang, let me turn back to you. I mean, you've heard what Brandon was saying and his definition of the polarity in this world. I mean, I'm wondering if you can give me Beijing's perspective on its role in this, in however you want to define it in this world.
Absolutely. I think that we are actually really, we have to admit we're entering a new era of a multipolar. That's for sure. Unipolar war is gone. I mean, that's why U.S. Put this new strategic report that they withdraw and retreat back to Western Hemisphere. That's their focus. That's get into our backyard and solve our domestic problem challenges. And every country should do that. Make yourself sustainable. So China is doing great things. China achieved 5% growth year after year, and another 5 years is coming. And also, China built the second largest economy in the world just by a fraction of a few decades. And so, in that case, people see it. It's no longer, kind of China versus the West. Because why we should follow one country party policy and have a negative feeling on China? China doesn't have a territorial dispute with European countries, with UK, with Canada. China doesn't really invade any countries. China's military navy not sent to the English Channel or Canadian Sea. They don't feel the threat of China, and then they don't have to follow the logic of the U.S. So that's really what happened, and they realized we have to really safeguard our own interests for two reasons. First, we need China to keep prosperity and creating jobs and attracting investment. Second, we need China to really save this global system. It's crackling and it's falling down or falling apart, and then China is become a new anchor now. And then those mid-power, of course, I think the EU will become ASEAN someday. Maybe ideologically, value-wise, they lean on to the US, but economic and trade, they lean on towards China. They're no longer black and white now. It really has to be case by case, and China could be a good, country that to work with for the economic and overall maintenance of the global order and the multipolar world.
Alicia, any response to what Henry was saying?
Yes, I have a comment. I actually think that when one looks at China's size, I would agree that there is a lot of hope. I would put it this way: hope that there could be massive gains for European countries, whether it's the UK or Canada. But when it comes to the actual gains, there are many, and that's important. The largest export market for Europe, for Canada, for the UK, and for that matter, for Japan, South Korea, and ASEAN, the whole of ASEAN is the US, not China. China, however, is the largest import market. So we depend on China for imports. And that's very important because China can create these bottlenecks, and it has happened already. Just a reminder of export controls on rare earth, it hurts. But one thing is that it hurts. The other thing that you have a big market. The US is the big market. So far, this could change, but that's where we are now. So, giving up on the market that is growing for you, for your exports, it's not easy. So it's not only security, it's actually an economic interest. FDI, European FDI into the US is 10 times bigger than that in China. So
Okay.
so it needs, I agree that this might happen, but it's not going to be immediate unless, and this is a very important call for China, China is ready to offer much more, really open its market fully. But we've been waiting for a long time, and that's why I think everybody realizes it's a good opportunity, but it's not as relevant for Europe as the US so far. That's
Okay.
what it is.
Brendan, I want to get your take on what Alicia was saying, because I know that you were agreeing with her from time to time.
Yeah, no, I think we're talking short term versus long term. And I really think that people need to understand that while there is certainly the rise of, we're certainly not in the unipolar system anymore, we're still transitioning. And I think that there's a lot of concern and a lot of media hype about some of the, Britain meeting with China. I think ultimately, though, the key thing to remember here is that the United States still, the economy, our military is still very much the centerpiece of the world. And it may be shifting, but the shifting is going to take, the shifting will go on long after Trump's got like 32 months left in office. This is going to continue on and become more heightened long after he's out of power. So what you're seeing right now, yes, I think are the early birth pangs of a new system. But as your other guest just pointed out, the numbers don't lie. The United States for Europe remains the primary sort of focus point. That may change over time. And certainly, I think if the situation between the U.S. and Europe continues to deteriorate, you will probably see that. But I just don't see any indication yet, particularly a country like Britain, is seriously shifting over. Especially, you saw the test here with the situation with I think it was the Chagos Islands. The British wanted to get rid of their holdings that the U.S. relies on for our facilities in the Indian Ocean at Diego Garcia. And it looked very much like that was going to happen until President Trump intervened and said it's not happening. And Keir Starmer backed down. And you see this play out repeatedly. So again, this is why I still say yes. I believe the multipolar world is coming, and the unipolar world is gone. But we are in a transition period. So any talk about Britain leaving the U.S.-led order, I think, is a bit premature right now.
Okay, all right. Brendan Weichert, Alicia Garcia-Herrero, and Dr. Henry Wang, thank you very much for joining us here on the Newsmakers. And thanks to you for watching. Of course, you can follow us on social media and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Adi Janayanar, and we'll see you next time.